Welcome.
Jesus is our inspiration.
Welcome to the deposit.
God's love is our motivation.
Welcome to the deposit with Brian and Dianalee,
It's our inspiration.
where we use what God has deposited in us
It's our
to
motivation.
inspire you to make a difference with what God has deposited in you. So come on,
It's our motivation.
let's do this. Let's go. Let's go.
Hello.
Oh, welcome to the deposit, season 2, episode 11, and we're so glad to have you today.
Yeah, so come on in. Let us know where you're watching from. And we are always thankful for those who are tuning in, for those who like and share our page and share our stories with others. So you're encouraged, and also those that you're sharing it with are encouraged as well.
Yes, and so today's title that we're is going to be is "Remember Who He Is," and we will be discussing what we learned through one of the scariest moments in our lives.
Yes, so stay tuned to hear about all the details of that season in our lives. And, you know, we just always say that we want to remind you, you know, that we're just ordinary people using the gifts that God is depositing in us to encourage you to use the gifts that God has deposited in you. And so today, as you hear our story, we just want you to be reminded of who God is and his faithfulness and his goodness, and that you can rely on him and trust him.
Yeah, the tagline for today, for this season is a little light goes a long way in darkness. And sometimes, you know, you hear so many things about the uncertainties and all that things that are going, and it can be very heavy on you. And sometimes it's just, you just have to look beyond that. And so this week, as we were going through
Oh, I was going to say we're feeling a little under the weather this week.
Yeah. We actually were a little bit under the weather today. You know, when you're sick and stuff like that too, it's like sometimes you can get underneath a cloud. And so, you know what? I just decided, you know what? I want to. I want to just begin to stir my faith. It's like I just decided to be proactive, and I started just listening and finding testimonies about what God is doing today in people's lives, what's happening today in people's lives, and it was just stirring my faith as I heard amazing stories, real stories about people coming to Jesus, even in the midst of the crazy opposition of struggle. And people being healed, people being set free, but just miracles that God was doing, not just back then, but today. And so sometimes you just need to be proactive in stirring your faith.
Yeah, I was listening to just a little clip about how this particular ministry got started, and they have been around for 100 years, and their ministry is called Back to Jerusalem.
Amazing ministry.
Yeah, and it started because this man had a passion to reach the world for Christ. They had a vision to reach the world, and in that same year, 1921, the Chinese leaders and stuff had come together with their vision for communism. And so over the years, the communist vision is to eradicate Christ from their culture. And the vision of Back to Jerusalem is to share the gospel throughout all the world. And over the years, as much as China has tried to get Jesus out of their culture, he says today, they can't say for certain, but the exact number, but with a rough estimate, he can say that there are more Chinese Christians that are actually missionaries outside of China, in between China and Jerusalem. There are more of them than there are missionaries from every other country in the world, in that section of the world. And so I just thought that is amazing, you know, throughout all the challenges and adversity they face in the Chinese culture. As a believer, they're passionate and willing to risk it all to share the gospel.
Yeah, in these days, I mean, it just kind of stirs my faith just talking about it and just seeing that in the midst of so much stuff that's happening, you see the bad, you see the ugly, you see all the stuff that's broadcast. But in the midst of that, God is working in, even as they try to stomp out Christianity in China. It's so funny that it is from China that there's more missionaries that are going out into the world than any other country.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. As I was thinking about these and just meditating and just finding these testimonies, it started to stir my heart. But then, it says in Hebrews chapter 10:32, think back on those early days when you first learned about Christ. And so as I was thinking about that, an event came up from 2016 and came to mind that reminded me of how powerful God is.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just said yes to God's call to step into ministry, what God's called us to do. And it wasn't without struggle. It was a really pivotal time in our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Basically, one day we were announcing that we were stepping into ministry, and the next day we were scared out of our minds. We were, the fires had broken out, and our kids, my mom, and all that we owned was at risk of being burned. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
we could have lost it all. Fort McMurray could have been completely lost from the projections of what they thought the fire was going to do. And at that moment, we really knew that there was nothing, there was no one we could, place our trust in. Only God. He was the only one that we could trust in to protect us, protect our hearts and our emotions, but also protect our kids and my mom in this crazy situation.
Yeah, and so it really came down that we need to remember who God is in the midst of the craziest circumstances. I think even today, somebody said this: stop every day and look at the size of God.
Mm-hmm.
God is in control. He is in the midst of the war with Russia and Ukraine, in the midst of all the stuff that's going on. God is in control. And so I just want you to, just a clip that would share a little bit with you with what we are going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hasty exit. That might have been the last time. Might have been the last time I ever saw my house right there.
It's like Armageddon here. There's nobody on the road, nothing, absolutely nobody.
Cars are burnt. There's people on the side of the road with crying babies and dogs and broken cars and no gas and no food, and it's like it's in a movie. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
All Albertans are watching this. All Albertans are with the people of Fort McMurray.
The end of days, literally.
Literally, I think that's what it felt like in that moment. Even seeing that clip, anytime we watch things or remember, it does, kind of elevates your, emotions a bit. And it was a crazy day. We had actually, the team at our church had gone to Grand Prairie for a conference for the fellowship of our church. Yeah. And we had flown my mom in to watch the girls for us. And, there were evacuation orders before we left, but they rescinded them. So we all kind of thought it was done and we were good and everything was going to be okay. And we flew out Monday night. Monday morning, I think, was when we had announced that we were stepping into full-time ministry. And then Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., we got the call that they were again evacuating Fort McMurray.
And to put it in perspective, it was 88,000 people. They were evacuating not just one part of Fort McMurray, the whole city.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? And we were hearing on the news, the worst of the worst, that all of the Fort McMurray was on fire. We listened to the news that all the houses were being burnt, gone, and different things. And so it was
pandemonium. I think.
It was pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. And so in this, also, we had my mother-in-law who didn't live in that city and didn't necessarily know her way around, and she had the task of evacuating with the kids.
Mm-hmm. And so when people were evacuating at that time, you could choose to turn right for most people to get out of Fort McMurray. There's one way out of the city. And so if you would turned right, you would have to go through the fire that was downtown. And if you turned left, you would go towards the oil fields. Both choices were extremely scary. You didn't know if you were going to make it going through downtown. and you didn't know what would happen if you went left, because the fires still had to go out that way. And so if it reached the oil fields, that could have been crazy. And, you know, they wouldn't have any food or anything like that. And they were just trying to fly people out that way. And both options were just, they felt devastating at the time.
I tell you what, and if through that time, if you can think about it, having our kids are just out there, and us be so far away, and we're not able to get back. We're not able to do anything except watch and wait. And in that time, you know, we were at this conference, and we got together as a team, and we prayed. And then we decided, you know, they had a time of worship, and we could either be, you know, worrying, or we can either be, you know, just being taken over by all the things that could happen. But we decided to just go in and worship.
I think all afternoon we were sort of in panic with each other, trying to arrange everything with each other's kids and families and whatnot. And then when it came for this time to worship, we knew nobody could fly out, because you couldn't connect with your family. We wouldn't be able to meet with them. And so we just felt like this was our only option, was to pray and to worship. And it was incredible. It was like a new level of worship that we had never experienced before.
Yeah, because very few times you had a thought process, because all of our belongings were in Fort Mac, our family and different things, and so we had to go through the thought process that everything was gone. And so we worshiped, and I remember that, because I remember just worshiping God for who He is. I would begin to just to cry out to Him, and just to rest in Him, in who He is.
Yeah, with all abandon. People were very inspired too by what they saw from us, because they knew, you know, the people that were there knew and were praying for us and what we were going through. And then for us to come in as a team and worship, they were it just encouraged them to worship all the more. And so from there, in the middle of the night, my mom had decided to go left towards the oil field, and they were staying at our friend's office building. And so I thought, okay, at least they're safe for tonight. So we were getting ready for bed, and then all of a sudden we get a call from my mom saying that our friends, the roads have opened to go south, and so everybody wanted to get out. And so at 12:30 at night, they're all packing up and trying to head south. Now the crazy thing is that my mom had no gas, and she was having some troubles with the vehicle, and she wasn't sure what was going on. And so somebody had given her a little bit of gas, and they started driving through downtown. And then all of a sudden we, you know, half an hour after that call, we get another call. And my mom was in a bit of a panic.
And just to put it in perspective, when I don't know if we had said this, but when people were leaving town, they actually had water bombers just bombing the area of when they were leaving, because the flames were going up over the roads, and there's gas stations blowing up, and just so many things that were going on at time, and people literally just made it out by the skin of their teeth. I mean, just while the car was, even some vehicles were on fire, or just they melted paint, all that kind of stuff, to just get out there. So we get a call they're going through to try to get through, and then we get a call from mom, and just telling us that the car stalled on her way out. While there's fire on the side of the road and different things, and the kids were in there, and that just really, we got that call, and then actually the call got disconnected, and then we panicked. We tried to call them over and over and over again, and you know what? We couldn't get in touch with them, and
we couldn't get in touch with our friends that were with them. And so we literally had to go to sleep. We basically cried ourselves to sleep and prayed, because there was nothing we could do. And
we didn't really get that much sleep. But you know what? In the midst of that, there still was a peace that came over us in that time. We're in not knowing what was going on. And so, but one thing that happened in that moment was the thought process that, you know what, all our stuff could be burned. You know, our kids were there and just in flux, and we didn't necessarily know what to do, where to go. And our faith had to be in him. We had to remember who God is, how faithful he has been. And so that was an interesting night, but something happened in the midst of that, between, you know, during that night while we were praying and just really just having to come to just different realizations. Something happened in our hearts.
Yeah. And thank God, you know, that we know that God is present everywhere. You know, he's with us, he's with my mom and my kids and everybody else who is leaving and going through their own journey. I mean, we heard so many stories of, you know, God speaking to people through the fire and just revealing himself to people as they were going through this crazy evacuation. And so finally at 6 o'clock in the morning, we got a call from my mom. She was able to get, I think her phone had died. And so she had made it through the city, but she had told us that what had happened when she called was that the car stalled. And she just was like, oh no. She's like, no, God, like not today, not here, not with my grandkids. We're not dying in this place. We are getting out of here. And she just, you know, switched the ignition, and the car just, you know, carried her basically through out of town. And so we're so thankful. She just had a you know, determination that God was in control and God was going to get them out of this situation.
And you know, actually when she was out of the city, then the car died.
Yeah.
And actually had to stay on the side of the road for a while until we were able to tow it and get it fixed.
Yeah.
So but that was that I mean, I tell you what, in hearing that story afterwards still was just like wow, still makes your heart pump, right? See, we were 7 hours away.
Yeah.
We had no control. Our kids were in harm's way. We couldn't go get them. We had no trust but to trust in who God is. And I think that this is something to remember today in the midst of so much uncertainty with the wars, the struggles, the financial stuff that's going on. You know, we need to be reminded who God is and what he's done and what he's doing. And you know what? And it blows me away. I think about the disciples. I think about even these testimonies that we hear. It is that the testimonies couldn't come unless there was a test. You know, the miracle couldn't come unless there was situations and circumstances that need to happen. But I guess the biggest thing is to know this is that as we walk through this time, it's not just about us. I think I'll say this, that during this time over the last couple of years, I feel like I've gotten kind of selfish, kind of inward thinking. I kind of just thinking about our life, what's going on, just us. And really and truly, God is bigger than us. This whole thing is bigger than us. What's happening in the world is bigger than us. And God is so good.
Yeah, he is supreme. He's supreme over everything. Colossians 1:15-17 says, Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. Through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on the earth.
He made the things we can see and the things we can't see, such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all creation together. Come on.
When we think about who is God? Who is he? You know, the Bible says that he is all powerful, all knowing. He's always present. He's everywhere at all times, day or night, winter or spring or summer. He is there at every moment. So while we were in Grand Prairie, you know, and our kids and my mom were in Fort McMurray, God was at each place. He was and each time he was with each of us, helping us through the panic of what was happening and helping my mom stay like calm. She was just like, she was on a mission basically to get her grandkids out of Fort McMurray and to be strong and to be an anchor for them.
And so my thought process is that this, we were just only one story out of 88,000 people.
Yeah.
So God was not only taking care of us, but he's sovereign, he's eternal, he's holy, he's righteous, he's good, he's a God of justice, and he is love.
Yeah.
And it was just, even in the midst of this, all that's going on, his hand and his love and his heart was reaching out to everyone. And I just wanted to say this, that as we walk through our times of struggle, and we see, life doesn't always work out like perfect. It's not life is not a Hallmark movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's people that are suffering, that have been bankrupted, or they have lost their lives, or their families. There's different things that are happening in their lives, but that does not change who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we go through the hardest of times, which we have gone through some of the hardest of times, reminding us that it's not necessarily God is not God just because everything works out fine. God is God even when things are falling apart, because he is able to take us through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you think about the promises that God made to different ones in the Bible, Abraham and Isaac and all of Moses, the Israelites, the promises that he made, there's promises that he's given to us as well in this time. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe he's spoken different things to you throughout your life that helps you to just remember, okay, God, you are who you say you are, and you said this. So in this season where I feel like I can't see you, or I don't know what's happening, you said this back then, and so I can trust you now. This is what your word said back then. So you are that same God, and I can trust you now.
Yeah, because in January 2012, when we were going up to Fort Mac, and if you know Fort Mac, it's or just even rumors about it, it was very, very rough place, and very, very filled with so much stuff. It's very hedonistic. Not everywhere, but with the oil field and the people come up there, it was a very, very
you kind of, when you move there, as a believer, you want to go with a plan, because what you hear are kind of the bad things, as the greed and all of that kind of stuff. And then of all of that comes with it, the drugs, the alcohol, the
womanizing,
all of
broken
that
families and stuff like that. So on our way up there, where we felt God, in 2012, we felt to go up there. And as I was headed up there, I in my heart, I was like, God, please protect my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we stopped at our friend's house on the way up there for a few nights. And one night while we were sleeping, I just got a vision of an angel like over my kids. And it was
vivid,
very vivid. And I just like, God, what does this mean? He said, I'm going to take care of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be around them. I'm going to be on their sides. But you need to speak identity. You need to let them know who I am. And I remember that night. And so as we were talking, I think I remembered that night,
mm-hmm.
And what God said. And so then I just think about what the girls were going through with the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, man, God, you kept your promise.
Yeah, he did. And when we talked to my mom, we just wanted to, brush up, I guess, on the story of how she experienced it. And as soon as we mentioned it, her face kind of lights up, and she's just like, I went through the fire.
Yeah, there was just a burst of faith that came up, burst of joy that came up that happened with her through that moment. It was wow.
Yeah, she knew that God was with her, and God was going to be who he said he was in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
And also, even Kaylee came home a little bit later, and then we talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked about it, a smile came over her face.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, wow. It's like, as much as she's going to say,
yeah.
But she just remembers that she really doesn't remember a whole lot of the bad stuff that happened or the fires, but that it was a time where she had felt she was covered,
mm-hmm.
and she had peace. Even both our girls have fond moments of the worst moments of their life.
They're
doing through that.
Yeah, it's very true.
Mm-hmm. And so you know what? in this time, it's like sometimes you just have to remind yourself who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, it's like if you're overwhelmed by all the stuff that's going on, all the bad reports, all the things that happen that may be in your family, in your nation, like there's a lot going on, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of ways where our mind can get tracked into all the bad that's going to happen. And I just really just feel that God said, remind yourself of who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And in Hebrews 10:32 to 35, it says, think back to the early days when you first learned about Christ. Remember how you remained faithful, even though it meant trouble, I mean, terrible suffering. Sometimes you were exposed to public ridicule and you were beaten, and sometimes you helped others who were suffering the same things.
Mm-hmm. You suffered along with those who were thrown in jail, and when you owned when all you owned was taken from you, you accepted it with joy. You knew there were better things waiting for you and that will last forever. So do not throw away this confident trust in the Lord. Remember the great reward it brings you. Patient endurance is what you need now so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that he has promised.
And I think we have to remember that our promise wasn't that everything's going to work out okay the way that we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
The promise is that we're going to have, that we would have relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
that we would be, that we are just pilgrims. We're just passing through this earth. This is not our home. Our home is in heaven with Jesus. And everything that happens during this time is not necessarily for this moment. Is we have to see it in another state where as we suffer, as we walk through the hardships, that we are building our relationship with God, and God has a plan, and we're walking. We are, our goal in our heart is to follow what God is doing. And you know what? Sometimes it's I love it where it says, don't throw away your confident trust in the Lord. Remember who he is as you go through this time.
Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking back to the afternoon when we were all scrambling, trying to figure out our kids. And one of our team members had already lost their home, and we weren't sure who was going to lose what next or anything like that. And what I remember is just watching our friend Odette and worship and pray and being inspired by how much faith and what God was doing in her in that moment, as he just drew, he draws our hearts to him. And I think as we share these, hard things that we go through, as we listen to the testimonies of these probably hundreds of thousands of Chinese Christians who have given up their lives to go spread the gospel in the face of so much adversity, or whatever it might be, it inspires us as believers at whatever stage we're at to continue to draw near to God and do what he says, calls us to do, because we're confident in who he says he is, and we can have confidence in what he's called us to, and then have that confident hope of the promise that he's given us of eternal life.
And so today we want to encourage you. Even like you said, we're just ordinary people using what God has given us, gifted us with, whatever he is, that we want to use it to inspire you so that you can make a difference with what God has placed in you, because you matter. That the stuff that you're going through right now is a way where God wants to show you who he is. He wants to remind you who he is, that he is able, that he is working. Even when we can't see it, he's working. Even when we don't know it, we have to know that he is God. Remember that God is the one that you can count on, but also that we want to just walk out what he has planned in our lives. And that is the safest place that we can be in the midst of the hardest times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there anything else you wanted to share for that? But so we hope that this message, the story, has encouraged you today to just be reminded of who God is. And if you haven't watched last week's or any of the other previous episodes, we encourage you to go and do so. Last week we had our good friend Brian Allen on from Temple, Texas, and we shared some incredible stories about Mardi Gras, and then, there's so many others if you haven't gone and listened, but we would encourage you to like and share and subscribe to our pages here on Facebook, The Deposit with Brian and Dianalee, and also on YouTube.
Yes. And so, and if, we just very thankful for this time that we've had with you.
Mhm.
We pray that you be blessed. And if you would, if you desire to partner with our ministry and want to support us as we share the gospel and we minister, and we just excited for what's coming up in these coming weeks and months, you can just look on the screen and just follow the link, and you can support our ministry.
Mhm.
So God bless you. Have an awesome day, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.